Hey everybody, it's April Henry back again for another Facebook Live. Today is my 34th, and I'm going to be doing these every day, weekdays, 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time until I run out of topics. You can watch all my previous ones on my website, aprilhenry.com, or my YouTube channel, which is also called April Henry. I have run out of interesting shirts today. I am clad in a Costco running top. They're cheap, but Kirkland clothes are actually pretty good. I am wearing some Burt's Bees. It's got to be at least 10 years old. It's like colored chapstick. And even then, I felt it was too much like lipstick. Today, I'll be giving you even more ideas about how to spice up your book. Tomorrow, I'm going to be doing an Ask Me Anything. So ask questions now or later. And book-wise, I wanted to start talking about books. This is the Writing the Breakout Novel Workbook by Donald Maz. I really like his books about writing, so I'd highly recommend them. And I find this workbook to be really good. He talks a lot about how to kind of layer your book and make it deeper. And one of the things he talks about is think of something that your main character would never do, never say, and never think. And then someplace in your book, find some place where your character does say that, or does do that, or does think that. It makes it really interesting for the reader because they know that that character would never do it. And then they watch in surprise, but also understanding when they see that happen, and it has a lot of emotional resonance. So an author that I've known for a long time is Harlan Coben. I remember going to BoucherCon and seeing him in like 2000 or something. So I watched a couple of specials based on his books that were on Netflix, or series. One was called The Five, and one was called The Stranger. And if you have not watched those and you plan to, I would just stop listening right now, because I'm gonna talk about some of the twists that he put in. But I started making a list of the twists because it made it interesting. Now, do all of them work? Are all of them logical? No. So I would probably only keep the logical ones. I mean, they kind of work, kind of you have to suspend some disbelief. So your mileage may vary depending on what kind of stuff you write and how willing you are to have something happen that might not really happen in real life. Like in The Stranger, a person is knocked unconscious, and they're in a hospital bed. And so there's a lot of like, if they die and someone did this to them, could it be murder? And then once they finally wake up, they have no memory of what happened. So there are some things that could make it interesting. A person knocked unconscious, what's going to happen to them? And then a person who has no memory of what happened to them. And actually, lack of memory after head injuries is not uncommon. They usually hurts your brain. I mean, anything that knocks you out is going to do something to your brain. There is a character who is slipped drugs and doesn't know it. There is a person who does something on drugs and doesn't remember that they did it. There is a character is seen slipping off with someone else, and then the reader has to kind of wonder what happened after that. There's stuff about where using the phone location, which could be an exciting thing in your book. If you have a tracker like Find My Phone and you know someone's password, maybe you could watch them be moving around. There is, at one point, one character lies to another character about conversation they have. There is a faked pregnancy in The Stranger. There's someone who is stealing school funds. There's someone having an affair. Now, in books like this, like stealing school funds and having an affair may not be the main thing that is happening in your book, but because this character is doing this thing that they like to keep a secret, they do a lot of things that cause confusion, lay down false trails, lay false clues. There's a character who has Munchausen by proxy. Someone sends nudes to someone else and then they get released more widely. A person lies about witnessing something. The person who says they're going to leave someone is instead murdered. there's a father who turns out not to be a biological father. And in the show, there is a character who is given a unisex name, and you're led all along to believe that they're one sex, but they're really another sex. And finally, there's blackmail. So whenever I watch something that has a lot of twists and turns, I might write them all down and think to myself, well, is that a twist that I could put in my book? I mean, someone having an affair is clearly not unique to a Harlan Coben book, but is there some interesting twist you can put on that? I like The Stranger quite a bit. The other one that I watched was called The Five. I did not like that one as much. There was really some big gaps in logic, but I did keep a list. Like there was a character who lied about where they were because they were with someone they weren't supposed to be with. So it affects information, and maybe they won't come forward and reveal what they know, because then they would have to confess to this relationship they're not supposed to be having. There's blackmail in that book, being blackmailed or being a blackmailer. There in the book, there's two people who lie and say they're a couple and then like that feeling. That's a pretty common trope, but it could be fun to play around with. And then there's a character who gets drunk, wakes up in bed with someone, and doesn't remember what happened. And again, that might be something that you could put in your book. Other ways to spice your book up: have your character make the wrong assumption, bring in new information that changes things, have somebody befriend your character, if the reader isn't certain as to their motives. Have somebody who everyone believes is missing or dead show up. Have another character turn on the main character. Have the villain become a good guy, or a good guy become a bad guy. I wrote a book, Learning to Fly. It's an old book, but in that book, one of the bad guys becomes a good guy, and I think that was one of the best books I've ever written. Have the time that somebody needs run out. Have somebody grab up a gun, but it's empty of bullets, or it's a fake gun. And remember, you should use what you show. The one thing that I found I didn't like in the TV show Unorthodox was that, which was partly fictional and partly true, was that there was a gun shown in the book. And Chekhov had a thing where he said, if you show a gun hanging over a mantelpiece in the first act, it should be fired in the third. And in an Unorthodox, that gun really never comes to anything. And I also started wondering about Germany's gun laws and the actual realistic thing of anybody getting their hands on a gun in Germany. But so remember, if you dwell on or show some knives, really sharp knives, or a gun, you're kind of dropping a hint to the reader. So make sure that that hint is realized. I always like having evidence disappearing or being discredited, or a witness who either disappears, is discredited, or recants. I just read a book where a character says something didn't happen, and you know that it did, and they lie for reasons that you can see, but it makes everything more confusing. And then finally, I think it's always great if you're writing a murder investigation to have the prime suspect end up dead, because that's certainly going to put the cat among the pigeons, what really happened. So those are some ideas for how to spice things up. Tomorrow is an Ask Me Anything, so think about anything you might want to ask. Right now, I'm thinking, since I'm not going to, I'll talk about writing related things, but I could also talk about how to win things on eBay that you really want, and curly hair. So obviously that is totally Ask Me Anything. So I hope you guys have a great day. Try and be productive. Try and have very small goals for yourself, because then you'll meet them. And I'll see you tomorrow.